Nicks and Bruises, we are back. It's part two. We're gonna finish up with Vaughn Allen. Vaughn, thanks for coming back, man. Sorry I had to cut short
It's all good.
earlier,
Thanks.
but I had to
It's
get
all
my
good.
daughter.
Absolutely understood. Thanks for having me again,
For
and
sure, for
much love
sure.
to you and the family.
Appreciate you, appreciate you. Um, I mean, we covered the your personal nicks and bruises. So right now we're gonna discuss Randall, RJ, the current team, how far we think we could maybe go this year, and maybe what do you think we should do moving forward, personally, and if we got enough time, hopefully we could get Sim up in here. So
Absolutely.
my first question to you is, with respect to everything that's been going on, the past day or two in the social media world, um, and with respect to Randall individually, however you feel, do you think Randall is underappreciated?
I don't think that he's underappreciated. I think that his value, in terms of the commodity, as the franchise sees it, as the fans see it, especially as per his play, is accurate, warranted. I do feel that the roller coaster in terms of his performance and effort kind of warrants the criticism. I do think at a certain point, um, some of the criticism is a little unfair because it's hard to step into his shoes and kind of do what he's been doing. Not being in that role, as the A1 guy, and I think that when you're in that position, it's hard to walk in those shoes. Those are big shoes to fill, especially New York being under the microscope and at the magnitude. But I think that those that understand what he's brought, I put him in the same category as Amare in terms of bringing respectability back to the franchise.
Hmm.
And I do think that there's a point where some of what he kind of responds to maybe kind of rubs fans the wrong way, and that's where the backlash comes from. But me personally, I love what he brings to the table. He is a headache sometimes because of his flaws. But overall, I think that his value in terms of who he is and what he brings to the table, when he brings it, is when I really appreciate that effort. But overall, I think that the criticism is fair because we can all see, and I personally watch him off ball, on ball, off onto the bench and see what his mannerisms, his demeanor is, and because I think we knock him down because he isn't who we need to be.
Hmm.
It's a little unfair, but I think that that's all of us at some point in our lives based on expectation, whether it's from our parents, whether it's from our peers, whether it's from our teachers, whether it's from the workplace. There's an expectation, and this year he hasn't met expectations, and that's disappointing, and I think he's dealing with the disappointment, and I can't confuse what he's done with who he is and what he could be.
I mean, it's funny because I definitely disagree. I think he's underappreciated. I've gone on record and said it from his first year going into the second year. I thought he was underappreciated, and a lot of the slander, because there was a lot of slander that year as well, probably more. I thought that was unwarranted, and and I think the criticism in itself is fair. I think the criticism he received, and I'm referring to then, not now yet. I thought that was unwarranted as well. But you
I,
you made you made a lot of good points that would actually be some of the same points I would make in his defense, or even in the defense of my stance as far as him being underappreciated. But before I get into like the details of that, like let me ask you, coming in to him becoming a Knick, what was your expectations of him then? Um, and then if it has changed since then, if so, what would his expectations be now? I guess we could kind of not even refer to the middle year, right? We
I
could talk about the first year and,
I
and,
do
and now after such a good performance last year.
I do think the middle is important because it provides context to where we're at now.
Well, I mean,
But
it's important, but we don't have to talk about what your expectation was in that middle year because
so
I don't think it changed from year one to year two. If it did, then by all means, you can tell me expectations when we signed them.
mhm.
Second year and coming into this year. The Public Enemy, salute. Appreciate you for joining us.
I absolutely I didn't have any expectations of him under the circumstance because he was being brought in under a coach, and with the coach's vision for him was something that he hadn't had experience with, although he showed flashes of what he could be in that role in New Orleans. I didn't think that he would be able to come in here year one and be able to execute that flawlessly, and so he struggled in that role, and we as a collective, as a team, struggle in him struggling in that role, and a lot of what I expected from that team didn't come to fruition because of the glut of talent at the power forward position, but also having RJ in in where he was or what he was at that time not being able to reach that, because I think that RJ now is what he should have been in year one, but Julius was in that role in terms of facilitation of an offense
Mhm,
of a what I'm saying, because I watched him a lot at Duke, particularly when Zion went down,
mhm.
and he was the floor general, he was the scorer. And so again, when those two games when Julius went out this year, you seen RJ kind of step into that mold. And so my expectations of Julius in one was no real expectation. I wanted to see how he would grow in that role. I wanted to see how he would perform in that. And so clearly it was a fail just in terms of the result. But I thought that we saw some signs and some things that potentially could yield itself great benefit in the future in terms of his facilitating in terms of um, his rebounding, saying rebounding and bringing the ball up. But
Um, am I clear in understanding that you would have liked RJ to be, let's say, number one option year one?
I think that they could have
Like,
the usage rate could have been a little bit more balanced. And I say that because when you put a player in a new role in terms of what their duties are, especially at the highest level, is going to take an
a
assimilation
learner
period. It's
a
going to
learner
yes,
curve.
it is. And so I couldn't expect again the highest performance from him or the highest performance from a rookie in RJ, but I did feel that the coaching and the coaching staff didn't have a middle ground in terms of the balance of the offense, in terms of sharing responsibility and sticking RJ in a corner and making him a scorer of sorts in many ways was very difficult in terms of who he is naturally, in the scheme of things, in terms of what his game entails. So, having two guys in unfamiliar territory in those roles, I thought didn't bode well for the chemistry of the team. Adding, other veterans that were playing for contracts too kind of jumbled up a lot of what was going on out there. But ultimately, when I judge him and when I look at him, especially when he's taking instruction or mentorship from the Kobe's and other solidified players, how to be a professional, how to be a leader,
Mhm.
that was something I knew that he had to grow in, because he didn't have that opportunity in New Orleans. He didn't have that opportunity in LA. So that was something that was going to be a learned behavior. And even now, to this day, this season particularly, I'm seeing that learning curve in terms of him being observant of his body language, him being observant of the energy he's giving off, what he's doing in front of the young guys. All of these things are evolving. And so it's not, for most of us, it's not fast enough, or if it isn't in you, we're gonna beat you down. You know what I'm saying? And that's the unfortunate part about, again, the criticism. But I do think it's warranted if you're not self-assessing. Everybody can see he's had, these ebbs and flows over these last 3 years, but only you can look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, I'm not playing up to standard. This year, particularly, I have not seen him take the onus in terms of his play. And people argue that he's underappreciated or his numbers are the same. And I'm not a numbers guy in relation to that outcome, but more in terms of, again, the team success and the camaraderie and chemistry. So him not being willing in certain instances, just in terms of because he comes across sometimes as a very me first player sometimes, and I think that that's what kind of shows itself, and it showed itself in little instances throughout the season. And I'm, again, Tony, I'm very big on some of the little things that's happening on the court, whether it's helping your teammates up, whether it's encouraging them, whether it's giving off good energy. And that's that inconsistency is where you get, the frustration. And I'm sure
You make great points, and it's just so crazy because a lot of the points that you make, I feel like, can be the same exact argument on why he's underappreciated. It seems to me like you understand a lot of the nuances of his role, relative being new to him, it being a learning curve. That he number one, it's a fact that he didn't master his role at this point in time. But I think you understand that that's not uncommon. That's not a bad thing per se, or it's not a reflection of him. It actually takes time, no matter who it would be putting to into that position.
I agree. I think
you made great points also about RJ being more accustomed to being in that role coming into college, into the league, where it would have been less of an adjustment for him than it would be for Randle. So that is a great argument or a great point as far as how you feel about RJ, why he maybe should have been, if not the go-to option or the number one option, playing that type of role like he's been playing as of late. We're gonna stay on Randle, but I do want to ask you: do you think with RJ, it's the role given, or do you think he's now become comfortable enough to take it? Because I think he's only playing like this now because he's reaching that level to do it. I don't know if he was ready to do that day one. He could have done it, but we may not have been a winning team. Not that we were that first year anyway, but
I do think that there's certain things that we all are good at naturally, and something that's just in us. Who he is in terms of his demeanor, in terms of his mental makeup, is exactly what we needed. And I would have liked to see that earlier. Do I believe he was ready from that day for that day one in terms of mental makeup? Yes. In terms of the results that would have happened, clearly there's some mechanical issues, some things that were missing from his game year one in terms of elusiveness, in terms of shot selection, in terms of reading defenses. All of those things were present, but I think that through repetition, through experience, and sometimes it all depends on the learner, it can happen faster or it can happen later. But it's something that I would have liked to see, because again, what the expectation was when you compile a roster that's looks great on paper, it's a bunch of names, that can destroy the development or can destroy the trajectory of what you're trying to build. And I felt that, where Julius was at that point and where RJ was at, their games definitely were similar in terms of what they could do and what they couldn't do, which was not so great from the outside, left hand dominant, power presence to the rack. They did similar things. and that was very hard. I think it was very hard for them both to coexist, especially without a lead guard instructing and balancing these things out. And so we got what we got, which was, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It was all over the place. But in certain instances, you can see either player, going to be able to grow in that role. And so I just felt like, all of those things that they didn't have control over, whether it was coaching staff, schematics, all of those things, kind of factored into the bigger picture, which, us as fans, we have our 2 cents on that. But, seeing how things evolve, we can see that they made the right decision just in terms of keeping them both. Whether that's the best thing going forward, I still think
we'll get there.
yeah. I still think that's TBD. But yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, good points. You can continue though. So going into year two, your expectations had they changed? Shout out to the chat too, Josh. I see you, Uncle Fulio, Canal, or Nixon Ish, Gerald. Salute.
Yeah, shout out to the chat. Big shout. Yeah. As far as that first season or going into the second season with Julius, I was very frustrated because of all of the, I guess, the inability to make the adjustments from habit, because we saw that there were certain quirks and, pet moves and things that he would do and still does even now, that he couldn't eradicate from his game. And those things frustrated me to the point that, I didn't want to see any more of it. And I don't think any of us, wanted to see any more of it because it was really weighing on the development of these other guys that were in the mix. One of those players, I don't want to say Kevin Knox, but I thought Kevin Knox was a casualty of Marcus Morris, particularly in practice with the keep what you kill mentality. When a player is destroyed in practice or somebody's getting the best in your practice, and you don't get a chance to kind of show what you do, much like we talked about earlier with Obi, not being able to get in there because Julius is that guy and show what he can do. But overall, I didn't have any expectations. I was really frustrated with how it ended off. And you look at the numbers, his numbers have been very similar for the last.
You said when you say ended off, you saying year
ended
one.
off year one into year two. So coming into year two, I was definitely looking at them to move on and try to find a better balance for the younger guys, only because if they weren't going to bring in a point guard or someone to orchestrate, what was going on, I knew that it would continue to be more the same because he wasn't built for the point forward role, at that point, because it wasn't natural. And so evolving into what he's evolved into, you can still see the lack
Learning
of it
curve.
being natural. Yeah, that learning curve to a point where, again, it's frustrating at times. But I do feel like, when you're put into a situation where you don't have patience or you're not given patience or that curve, you can sink in that. And I think he's fared pretty well. I think last year was a great example of that, where if there is no expectations, what's I had none. Hence, them going to where they went, they caught the whole league by storm. And now all of a sudden, he's a marked man come playoff time.
Great points. You mentioned Marcus Morris, and another thing I think we have to remember is Marcus Morris was the leader of the team that year for a large portion of that year, where that wasn't even Randle's role. You know what I mean? So he kind of dove into it. We talk about learning curve. It's not even like he had the full year of that on his back. He had a couple months of the end of the season to kind of become that. And granted, year one didn't turn out well, and then a full year last year. So just to keep things in perspective, we're really talking about 2 full years of him being in this role, which is relatively new to him. And this is where I say underappreciated, because you acknowledge this. I don't know if most Knicks fans do. I think when a guy gets put into the number one role, whether it be a rookie coming out of college, or a guy that we just traded for, or a guy we just signed, I think once you're put into that role, some of these fans put the expectations on them of the top five player in the league. So you know what I mean. Automatically, that's the bar. You know what I mean. And in that aspect, I think some things are very unfair. You know what I mean. And it doesn't have to be Randle that I'm referring this to. Like, it could literally be a rookie coming out of college. If he's put into that role, that's the expectation that's going to get put on him by some of these fans. But
I agree, and
continue.
I was going to also interject and say it doesn't necessarily have to be fair. You know, you're dealt the hand that you're dealt, and you deal with what's in front of you. You know, he handled year one to year two with gusto, with conviction, and I believe a lot of that had to do with the coach that they brought in, that being Thomas, and they really locked in and got to work ahead of schedule and got things rolling in the right direction a lot sooner than we all expected or the league would have seen. So I think that, again, having all of these things evaluated, you know, where he's at now, I think is a phenomenal place. Obviously, it's bad because he's not reaping the benefits of his winning, of course, and that's what it's all about. We're judged ultimately by that bottom line. Winning in the NBA equals success, you know. But I'm a big believer and advocate for small wins and celebrating those small wins. So I thought last year was something to be proud of, but I didn't think it was something to celebrate. And I feel like his efforts coming into the season with all of these accolades and personal endorsements and things like that may have clouded or may have pushed back a lot of the team's overall effort. Because one thing I don't see this year that I saw and heard a lot of last year was the desire to get better game in, game out. And it's almost like they expected to be, you know, some of us did with the acquisitions in the offseason, believe that they would take a step forward because of, you know, what they were lacking. And, you know, it wasn't a situation where it was, you know, adding something where you actually took away some of their greatest strengths by adding something that they maybe they didn't need, or maybe they needed a little bit more of a evolving from another player on the roster. Maybe it's RJ, maybe it's Quickly, you know. But I do understand what the front office was thinking, you know, as far as making that adjustment and bringing in what they brought in. And because it hasn't worked, and because he hasn't been vocal about that dynamic, you know, in terms of what it really is, you know, it's hard. Because even on Christmas Day, where Kemba had that great game as a triple double, and he said Kemba's the heart and soul of our team. And I don't know if he believed that. I didn't believe it. You know,
it definitely sounded funny. But it sounded funny.
I do understand where he was coming from and what his intention was in saying that, because of everything that was surrounding the franchise, everything that was surrounding the team. So it came at an awkward moment. But I do understand his intention, and I think that Randle is kind of the personality that, like, he's going to do what he do until he get his hands caught in a cookie jar, and then, you know, when you reprimand him for, he's going to come out doing it. So Sim mentioned something earlier on the other show today, where he talked about Randle guarding up who's this? Sabonis really, really aggressively. And just that one possession is what we're looking for.
Where was that? Or where's that all the time?
Possession to possession. And so that, like, if you show me once that you can do it, I believe you can do it again. It's more of a mental thing, you know, and I believe that's the case with a lot of these athletes in the NBA. Because not to go back to Knox, but if you can put up a Rookie of the Month performance, that means it's in you, right, to perform at this level day in, day out. You don't just, you know, wake up one day and be lit one month and then you fall off without there being some dynamics or something happening with you that curve you from that trajectory. So there's some things, and I think they're mostly mental, particularly with this team, particularly with this franchise, that doesn't allow players to go past a certain point unless they're able to dig deep within themselves to succumb to ignoring what's going on the outside, ignoring what's going on the outside, and tap into their potential to galvanize and then go from there. And that's why, I talk about spirituality and leadership in the sports forum, because some things are very mental and not ability based. You know what I'm saying? Because if you can get 30, which, some of these guys in their first stints out, like Grimes, 27 against Milwaukee, his first night out, it's in you. So you can't tell me that things aren't or couldn't be better than they were that first night, and you just was thrown into the fire. It's in you,
It's
So
you're right, but a lot of it also has to do with it's you gotta have some luck in there. You gotta have the right circumstance. You gotta have, you know what I mean, like everything. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's system. You hear about a system guy
mhm.
who may be able to get 30 in this system, but that might be the only system that he could get 30 in, and
a
any
lot
other
of
system he might be a 5 point a game scorer, and can't get more than 15.
I
You know what I mean?
I agree
But
with that wholeheartedly, because sometimes it's chemistry, and not for nothing. If you look at a coach like Mike D'Antoni, for instance, it's no coincidence that the point guards under his tenures
thrive.
perform the way they perform. It's a system. It's a system thing. And so, with Julius, I do think that a read and react, or kind of where you got to think the game or kind of respond in this way, doesn't yield probably the best efficiency for him, because of his natural ability and his strength and all of these things, that he just needs to be given a role and let him flourish and dominate in that role. Now he's given a role, right? But I do feel that he is sinking or swimming in that role, in which he's kind of teetering, sinking, because of the turnovers and his inability to read defenses, coming from this way. It's been, I think he had enough reps to kind of see, but because he hasn't gotten to that point yet, are we going to say he needs another year in this role to be able to determine where double teams are coming from and how to get the ball to the open man, or to, attack certain sets?
I
I
think
do.
he's done that though. I think he's improved in that area.
Mhm.
I think he's learned about facing up and that making it more difficult for them to come from the blind side. So I'm for that. I'm for that. I think he needs another year, obviously, and I don't think his role has to change for, let's just say, because I don't think you're arguing this, but I think RJ could surpass him and be like option one without Randall's role changing at all.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I
So
mean, I mean, if you look at the numbers, I was just pointing this out earlier, that Randall is at 20 points per game right now, 20.0, and RJ is at 19.2. So, just in terms of what they have going on, and RJ literally stepping into this new light, now, shows that they can coexist. I think that, the wild card, or the element that'll allow them to get forward, would probably be that true floor general, or that player that has total control of the team's focus, in terms of, these mental lapses where they're not doing certain things and allowing other teams that aren't better than them to, get on their heels, or they're not executing or giving enough effort in certain instances. And so that's where, you kind of see that. I think that's the difference from them being, like he said, the difference between the records being flip-flopped, 35 and 28 or whatever. I do think that that's the small difference, because we can see that when he's on his game, when RJ's on his game, when the Knicks are on their game, they clearly can play with anyone. It's just a matter of the intangibles and as Tom likes to say, and I love to say, it's about mental toughness, the ability to not so much think the game, but to react to what's going on in front of you. And sometimes you kind of like what Randle is doing is a little premeditated, but I do like to see his him thinking the game a little bit, or at least kind to what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of bait the defense into thinking he's doing one thing and then do something else. I think LeBron and Luka are very great at that as ball handlers, duping the defense into, seeing, believing there's certain things, but they're taking other things away.
You know what's crazy about that? I feel like because he tries to do that. I think that's why his season has been so bad, because he tries to predetermine or trick the defense and then react off of that. I like him better when he's making quick reactions, quick moves, and focused on either I'm going to score it, I'm going to pass it. You know what I mean? Like, that's when I think he's at his best. I agree that he's been doing that, and maybe he has to do that to learn it, to put that into his bag. But I think that's what kind of killed him all year long. It was hard for me to explain it. I tried to explain this on Sim Show a while back, where it feels like he's trying to go into the move, and you basically said it the way I was trying to say it. Bait the defense into reacting a certain way so he can react another way.
Miz, he got a crossover, a step back, a certain whatever, and he'll have the defense faked out, but then he won't shoot it. And he's doing too much in that sequence, and you can see there's a lot of things going on at that moment. And I think the most important thing is confidence. And so again, when you haven't been in that role, and you can see he's been struggling mightily when it comes to being able to finish in clutch situations from day one. And so it could be a combination of things, whether it's fatigue, because he plays marathon man minutes, whether it's the guys on the floor not being able to create the way he is, so defense is keying on him. But even he has had great looks to close out games, and I think he hasn't been able to hit those shots that he's making at other points in the game.
I
Whereas
agree
when you
with you
need him,
100%.
need him both up.
I'm even worried. And I'm a Randle supporter. I'm even worried about him making the decision down the stretch. So it's not even about him taking a shot or per se, but even finding the right person in that moment. I'm scared of. Now, if someone finds him, to your credit, if we had a floor general in between these two guys that could determine RJ's in the right spot right now with a mismatch down the stretch, let me go to him. Or Randall's down there in the post with a little guy on, let me go to him. And then Randle takes that last shot. I would be a lot more comfortable in that. And another concern, because we're gonna transition to RJ, is I love everything that he's showing, and he's been hitting his free throws as of late. I mean, like past couple of games.
This is Julius. We talking about RJ?
I'm transitioning to RJ.
RJ, okay.
But it fits for both of them, because I think down the stretch it's scary, because RJ has shown some clutch moments as of late this year, but when it comes down to the free throw line, I think both of them are not reliable. You know what I mean? And I think for either one of them to really lead this team, or just be considered a number one option on the team, they gotta get that under control. Forget about even taking the last shot or the game winner. If it comes down to a game winning free throw, I mean, and it sucks, because even our better free throw shooters, Burks, you know what I mean, like have missed under the pressure.
pressure bust pipes. And
So,
New York pipes are bigger than the mall. So when that
so,
one bursts,
so I mean, we're gonna transition to RJ and give me your thoughts on that in particular, because I
right?
think that's the next step for him. Continue the way you're playing now, but now it comes down to the clutch moments, free throws, and decision making, because that'll put you over the top.
Yes,
What are your thoughts on that, or what is it going to take for RJ to continue to show who he is or who he can become?
absolutely. I like what I've seen from him the last couple of games. You know, he had the 46-point game, and that 46-point game, he missed a ton of free throws. And the first thing he stated after that game was him getting that together. And the game after that, he was a little rocky, but the game after that, he was flawless from the line. So I think one of the things I love about him, I think he's awesome, but one of the things I love about him is that he's very self-aware, Tone. He's very aware of the work that needs to be done, of the effort that needs to be put in for certain things in order to click for him. And I love the fact that he's growing into this leadership role where he's actually kind of, you know, having Julius defer a little bit and kind of commanding his touches. You know, when you asked me earlier, do I believe that that's something that he did or something that coach did? And I do think that it's a collection of both, because again, mindset in sports is above anything. And so his mental makeup, his confidence, you can see is growing each day, each possession. And one of the things that I love about him absolutely is he could be 1 for 6, 1 for 7, but you'd never know. You know, he does the other things, the intangibles throughout the game, and it doesn't weigh on him. Therefore, you know, that shows me that he's built for that leadership role, because he can, you know, stay even keel, and when he needs to be that other personality that he can be, you know, a Robin, or he can be a Batman. And I think that that's the secret sauce when it comes to winning, because even D Wade and LeBron had to have that dynamic where it's like, you know, you go, I go, or it's your team. And so, you know, I kind of see that happening with these two guys now, where, you know, RJ is really reaching for greatness, and he talks a lot about that, and it's important. Julius, you know, he talked a lot about where he wanted his game to be this year, and I think that, you know, not making expectations, I guess, known kind of makes it a little bit easier for people to not key on it. Because if I tell you it's coming or what I'm working on, you're going to be looking for it. You know, so I heard a lot about both of these guys working on their right hand in the off season, and I was excited to see what that looked like in game this season. And we see a lot of, you know, RJ being able to use both, which I think is a plus. The free throw situation, I think that the more reps he gets, the more he's in this situation where he is that kind of that guy, so to speak. He'll flourish in that role, you know, because I think his history, who he is as a player, kind of validates that for me.
I hope so. I hope so. I'm gonna jump back real quick. What do you think about people who say Randle has been good for RJ in the sense that he gets all the bullets? You know what I mean? Like he's the shield. You know what I mean? Like
I think that
RJ's been able to grow organically without the pressure of being the third pick overall. And now, granted, I know it's gonna be funny for you because you said he kind of you expected more from day one.
I do think that Randle being here takes a lot of the pressure off of everyone. You know, RJ particularly, you could say that, but for me, knowing RJ's makeup, I
He
do
ain't
feel
ducking it.
like RJ clearly is a leader. You know, this couple months ago when, you know, bro didn't want to speak to nobody and the team paid the fine. You know who was at the pin? It was RJ. You know, that says a lot to me about who he is and what he sees for himself. you know what I'm saying, and the team. You know, whether it was discussed or not, I couldn't tell. You know, it felt natural to me in terms of what he touched upon and what he was doing. So Julius being the bullet taker, I'm not buying it, only because anybody that steps on that floor is subject to bullets. And us as Knicks fans, we not sparing a clip on nobody. You feel me? So if you're playing like trash or you playing like whatever, you're gonna get that smoke. You know what I'm saying? So RJ, when he was stinking it up first year from three, he tightened it up. Second year, a lot better. Third year, he's right, lock and step where he was last year, to continue the consistency narrative in terms of his outside shooting. So we could say it's safe to say that it wasn't a fluke. But man, if Julius had the mental makeup of RJ, he probably would be the MVP because of his natural ability. You know what I'm saying? And him being in this situation, in on this team, in this city, you know. But RJ, he hasn't been spared. You know, I see the comments, I hear the chatter about him, and trust me, he taking them slugs just like Julius is. You know, so who's getting more bullets? I don't even think matters at this point, because we're not where we hope to be. I'm not going to say we're not where we want to be, because that's a, a development thing, or time thing, patience thing. But nobody's sparing no smoke from none of these players.
I think the Knicks as an organization, I'm not gonna say they did it all that whole stretch with Randle being out, but I can definitely name some days, and I know it wasn't RJ, where he had a bad game and he wasn't at the podium. You know what I mean? Like they tend to protect their players a lot more than
Damn, they protect
before.
everything.
I'll say that. So I didn't even really think it was a thing with Randall. I didn't notice it until people started talking about it.
It,
I thought it was the organization. Um,
they I mean, from what I gathered, men didn't want to talk. So the organization probably understood where he was at, what was going on, and said, "We'll eat that for you." But I wasn't calling for his head, and I didn't think that it was a huge thing. You know, just in terms of, I thought that it was probably best, because there wasn't anything that he could have said to us or the media that would have adjudicated him from any of the stuff that we were seeing out there. You know, and the only remedy for that is great play and winning.
that's
You
true.
know, so if you didn't want to,
Honestly, I think anything he would have said had the potential of making it worse.
so they say if you don't got nothing good to say, you shouldn't say nothing at all. So I don't think that anything he could have said or done at that moment would have put him, in greener pastures. So maybe the Knicks did do the best thing, but I do understand why. I was one of them, trying to understand why the higher ups, the guys that are a little bit more mature, and they're, in their position to speak on the state of the team. And it's hard when you don't really know what's going on. So when you left to assume, or you left to kind of figure things out or connect your own dots, you could come up with a world of stories and a world of theories. But the one thing that never lies is your attitude and your effort, because your attitude is a reflection of the things that you think. There's some nights where he thinks and the Knicks think that, they're the hottest thing smoking. And then there's some times where you can see that they don't have that confidence, and, they're losing to teams that, they shouldn't be losing to. So, if he was that guy, Tony, I think we would love that about him, being able to shield, his players from, smoke. But he's, in my opinion, a protect my own ass kind of guy, you
Mm,
know,
I
and
don't
that's
know
my
about
that
that.
that's
I,
my opinion based on his behavior. Because there was an instance where the assistant coach was showing him some footage of himself,
Knock the laptop
and
down.
he was so frustrated about it, but it was turning into something hyper aggressive
Mm-hmm.
from something that's a part of your job description. And
Mm-hmm.
so whether or not that's who he is, I do feel like this man is doing his job. This man is pointing out something that obviously we all see. How you respond to that is important, obviously, because of everybody else that's on looking. But me personally, I want to have that connection with my assistant coach and him know that I do
Mm-hmm.
see it. I'm working on it. We're gonna get better at that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like I said, that's the thing I keep back to is that I don't hear him speaking on the lacks. And so when things are good, when we here, New York is here and all that, I see the pride. But when we're being embarrassed, I don't see the pride. I see something else. And that's why I said when it's good, you gotta be the same way when it's bad, and vice versa. So, you know, I take it with a grain of salt. I do believe that he's still growing. His maturity obviously leaves much to be desired. But I think that this year, particularly from coach, from everybody, there's a lot of lessons and a lot of self-reflection that needs to happen in the off season for them to truly come back and be better. Because if they were judging themselves where they were based on that Atlanta series and made the team to beat Atlanta or to
Mm-hmm.
fill in the holes, that's maybe a cool way of going forward. But I don't think that was the biggest
That,
issue, with
that's
this team.
that's. I felt like that's what they did too.
Yeah,
I felt like they kind of constructed their team to like they was coming into the season right there at that 4-5 matchup against Atlanta, all over. Like they built the team to beat Atlanta more than they looked at what was going on throughout the league or what could potentially help them beat more than just one team. You know what I mean? That's
yeah.
the way it felt. But um, do you do you think? Oh man, I lost my question.
Hmm. Was it RJ base?
It was more about uh no, it wasn't. It was back on Randall.
All right.
um, excuse me.
Mhm.
So after the first year, before the second year started, I had wrote a little article, um, basically saying, titled, um, "Will Knicks fans owe Julius Randle an apology?" Right, and
Mm,
and the majority of the article focused on the how crazy the fans was going on him. Like I agree that criticism is always warranted if performance is not up to standards. But I, from the outside, as a fan, um, I think nope, I didn't even start my podcast yet. I was still just frequenting others and you know guesting with nothing but Knicks.
okay.
But the comment section, like it got to the point where it was aggravating me. Like I was like, yo, y'all wilding, y'all OD, y'all going crazy, right? So that was the reason I wrote the article, right? Because coming into bringing him on, I actually wanted us to go after Randall. I want us to go after D'Lo. I looked at their careers, the trajectory of each year they improved
Right.
every year, and throughout the league, that's a rare occurrence. And usually, when that happens, like you can tell that they're gonna be a fairly good player, throughout the league. Like they haven't plateaued yet. So that was my thinking. My thinking, and like let's get Randall D'Lo. Once I knew KD, wasn't on the table. Right, let's get Randall. Let's get some young guys that haven't reached their peak yet,
Hmm.
and kind of watch them grow into who they are. My thinking also was it's gonna take time. You know what I mean? We're gonna be patient. We got to be patient. So again, after year one, I didn't like the energy out there towards Randall, so I wrote this article. Blah 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 blah. My question to you is, based off what we've seen from Randall year one to year two, do you think we could see a similar growth from year three to year four, and even if it's not identical or better than year two, I
Yeah.
think it's in some aspects, it may not be numbers wise, but maybe
The
percentage wise and things of that nature. So, but do you think we could see that same type of growth?
I I do think that we could see growth, but I'm not looking for growth in the numbers department. I'm not, because the things that he needs to grow in aren't numbers based. They're intangible based. And so those the little nuances of the game, like those little things are what are having some people call for his head, because there's a laissez-faire attitude sometimes that drives us all crazy, because we understand that this is a privileged position that they earn respectfully to get there, but you don't want to blow it away, not giving maximum effort, not giving maximum focus. And so, I thank God that his spirit doesn't rub off on everyone. You feel what I'm saying? Because if he was the true leader, we would be in a wild position, just in terms of record wise, but just in terms of the energy or the feel surrounding the team. And I think that we've reached that point because he's transformed his energy, right? Because he's still taking the same shots, he's still doing the same turnovers, he's still doing the same things. Obviously, the numbers are way down, and we could say it's Kemba, we could say it's Fournier, we could say all of those things, but none of those things are going to show itself to be true unless he gets rid of all of these things that we've knocked him for, which is giving maximum effort, which is sometimes, deferring, or saying, in a situation that this probably is the best thing for my team. Most guys that are scorers and love to get at it, they never turn down shots, or they never defer. Recently I've seen some of his heart, his attitude towards RJ's ascension, and it's great to see. So that continuing is something that I would love to see continue, because as I said, I don't think he's finished evolving, but I do believe that they both need a conduit to kind of help them both make the game easier, make it for all of them. But those two in particular, because you can see that they're not the guys that's going to blow by their guys really fast. They have to have some sort of downhill momentum or some forward momentum to get by their defender. And so when you don't have that, that guy, you got to use your teammates to be that. And people not their teammates, like his teammates aren't that good. He does pass the ball. The Knicks are trash. They don't hit shots. This out of the third. And if you look last year, they were hitting shots at a high rate beyond the arc. So this year, not so much. Him, not so much. So him being a better shooter and a better aware of situations is one of the things that I think is going to help the entire roster. I get so frustrated with him, because he does these things that I know are naturally in him. And sometimes us being creatures of habit, it's hard for us to excuse that. So, I pardoned it year one. Year two, we tolerated it because he did what he did. Year three, it's like, oh, now we back to this again. And so that's the frustration in it. And, as being a parent, when you see the growth of, your little one doing certain things and then they regress in certain areas, you're like, Mama, I thought you had that. I thought he was good. We back to that now. So that's the frustration that he's dealing with. And because of last year's success, now it seems even it's more raw now, because you gave us a little taste of what it is. You know what I'm saying? You gave me the sugar, you gave me the candy. Now it's like you're going back to the sour, you're going back to that. And it feels like we being jerked. And it's not, because again, his performances have been up and down. Numbers don't show you that, but his energy and again, those intangible things have always left much to be desired. And I think fans are just effing tired of it, to a point that's like you get, frustrated. And so I don't know if there's ever been a player in our tenure as Knicks fans that has had, probably maybe Patrick, but Patrick, I think, was steadfast in his position with the fans. Like, y'all don't like me, y'all don't with me. I feel the same way. But do know one thing: I die out here on this court for for what I'm trying to get. And so that's, I think, what we all really wanted to see from him.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair. That's definitely fair. Last year, so me and Sam was talking. we decided that we got to finish at least 500 to make the play in, right? That like, and at the time it was like 15-3. We got to finish the season. There's 18 games left. We got to finish 15-3 to be 500. That's 3 5-1 stretches, right?
Right.
So we end up. I think we won. I don't know if this.
Down
I
the
think
stretch
this
last
is
year or
no
this year?
this year. This
Okay.
year for us to finish 500. But last year, I looked it up. We ended the season 16-4.
19-4.
I think it's
Yeah, about same something like that.
16-4.
Okay.
Well, maybe it was, but the last 20 games it was 16-4. So, that's an amazing run, and it's not, it's one less game and one less win. You know what I mean? To finish 15 or two
This
less games, one, you know what I mean, one less win.
this year's
I'm not saying we can't do it, but
I,
I'm saying like
I'm a pack. I'm gonna pack that up quick, bro. We got 6 players. We got 6 players right now out of the rotation, and the fact that we don't have the chemistry that we had last year into this year, and I'm not count. I count DRose, but DRose is so far away from DRose mode right now, where we at in the season, that we almost begging for him to be something that he shouldn't have to be. You know what I'm saying? On the coming, just in terms of what he needs to be to get this over the hump, because we don't know what he's gonna look like after his rehab. And so I liken KD's injury not to this one, but what he did in coming back to his team to try to save face to win a title. And in a moment where he had it going, he forgot that he was still recovering and did a really explosive move, a crossover into a 3, and jacked up his Achilles again. The adrenaline, the flows. Yeah,
okay.
But I mentioned him because I don't want DRose to come in and have that one moment where he's just trying to go at it, right? Super hard. And then we back to square one because he's caught up in the height of trying to win it all. I don't think that at this point of the season
I don't think two things. One, I know DRose doesn't think we're gonna win it all, right? So
right.
so I don't even think, like, in that scenario, I think that's a hard decision for a player to make.
The player is never going to get out his own way. We know he wants to play always.
But if there is a player that is going to make that decision and say, I'm not playing because I'm not ready, I think it's DRose. I don't think he comes, and Kawhi, absolutely. I don't think DRose comes back unless he feels like he's good to go, ready to go. Okay. And then on the flip side of that, whenever he comes back, this year, next year, I think it's the same risk, because you talk about maximum effort. You talk about, like, you want to see that you're giving your all, and then we okay with the result. That's who DRose is. He's gonna give it his all or every possession. So that same risk, I think, is there, whether he comes back this year or next year. Now, I get the logic, and it's not worth risking him coming back for what ultimately is a chance to get in the playoffs, right?
Right.
So I get the logic in that, but at the same time, I think logically you could say Rose didn't get hurt this year. We're in playoff, if not play in. Like, it's not a question about, can we get there? We're there with DRose. Those lost games, 20-point leads, double-digit leads. Like, I don't think that happens with Rose on the floor. You talk about somebody that we need to kind of make the decision for Randle and RJ, and then kind of feed them into, you know what I mean, feed them into their shots. That's who DRose, you know what I mean, slow it down. We just got 3 turnovers in a row, or 3 missed possessions, and they scored in a row. Let's settle that. Like, that's DRose. So I And
I just
I'm talking about if it happens, even if he doesn't come. I'm not saying it can happen. I mean, yeah, I am saying it can happen because it's not mathematically it can.
right. You know, my thing is they don't have health on their side right now, which factors into the chemistry. But I don't mind them going full on for it. They should, because you can't project where you're going to be based on the odds in the draft lottery. So it's important for you to finish out the mission this year with your best effort. So, I'm okay with whatever the results are, just as long as we give them maximum effort when given the opportunity, to play, whether it's the young guys or whomever. I just want you to put on, as best you can, and let the chips fall where they may from that point.
What I love about it, if somehow we could reach that with these young guys playing, or even if they wasn't, you know what I mean? Like essentially, making the play in is a playoffs, right? It's a one game elimination, or you got to win two. You know what I mean? So it gives these young guys, even the guys that were in their rotation already, because this is a relatively young team, which drives me nuts when people say play the young guys, play the young guys. We're probably one of the youngest teams in the league, period. And we had what 5 24 and younger guys in the
Yeah,
rotation
play
anyway.
the play the
You know,
young
so
guys is code word for sit them old heads down. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
I
I know,
mean, there,
I
there's
know.
there's points where I look at the chemistry between the five on the floor, and I notice the Knicks have their most success when they have guys that are veteran, like two veterans and three young guys, three vets, two young guys. It's a balance. When you got the starting lineup out there, we know what they are. It's it's that synergy hasn't been working, so whatever that healthy balance is over time, I think Tom has been searching for it, but
Hmm.
because of all of the inconsistencies with availability and I guess trying to get acclimated with personnel, has yielded some of what we see now. But don't get it twisted. When DRose was out there, we was still up and down with some of these lead changes, up by 20, down by 20, and he was
Hmm.
in there, and he
I
he to
think
me though, I'm sorry, during that time was probably the most consistent Nick, if you will, the best Nick in terms of performance night in, night out, consistency up until that point. And
absolutely, and then I think the last 2 games before he went out were the only two like bad performances he had this season, in my opinion. And then, just looking at it in hindsight, or like connecting the dots, I gotta say that was because he was hurt. Something was wrong. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe he had to try to play through it, or
he
yeah,
mentioned that he was banged up a little bit prior to that, and that he was thugging it out to
you know what I mean. So even like I admit we weren't playing to the standard, but he was kind of the guy that
he
had us staying even kill, staying at that time above water, or just hovering around 500. You know what I mean? So I just think if he hadn't gone out, at the very least we'd be around 500 already, and hovering into playing, like we'd be in playing contention.
I agree. I think that his role on the coming off the bench with those group of guys quickly, particularly Obi,
Hmm.
particularly
Hmm.
benefited from him being in the lineup, and so we've seen both of them regress in terms of performance consistently from his absence. But obviously, quickly is like he found what he needed. He found what he's looking for recently. So I'm happy that seeing some growth in him recently. Just in terms of again not letting the stretch of bad games or just a bad season derail him from continuing to grow in what he's been asked to do.
The
As
funny
the
thing, I think the defense has been there with Quick all year, and I think the rebound has improved since the beginning. and,
definitely
and I think the playmaking has improved since the beginning of the year. I think the only difference was his shot was hadn't been falling. He was in one of the biggest shooting slumps of well, it's a short career, but you know what I
his
mean. It felt like he wasn't gonna get out of it.
quickly
Do you,
shots. Huh?
Do you think if Quickly was shooting the way he's shooting as of late, last 12 games I think it is, do you think he would have been inserted into the starting lineup at the point guard,
I
or
think
do you think Tibbs would have still went with Burks at that point? And
well,
obviously,
I think the Kemba dynamic made it almost impossible for them to have any sort of gauge in what they wanted to do with that role because Kemba was already ingratiated into that role as per DRose, meaning he
what
said, "Yo,
what
this
well
is gonna
remember Kemba got sat,
right now,
and then he put Burks in,
right." Which
which to me didn't make sense. And again, I'm a Tibbs supporter too. Like you think I go hard for Randle, I go hard for Tibbs too.
well, to me, you at that point you were choosing a lesser of two evils because Burks had experience running a point guard, but not experience to the point where
Not
we say like
extensive.
this is a lit situation, and quickly we still know was developing into it.
Hmm.
So essentially, giving quickly that point guard role, I think it would have been a good idea because I'm not. I think that the numbers show that him with any unit, he's gonna be okay. And the fact that Julius Randle and RJ handle the ball as much as
Well,
they do would allow him to be the
be
recipient,
himself. Be
yeah, the recipient of, so I do think that, we get caught up sometimes in roles, PG,
hmm
SG. And if you're watching the game, you'll see there's
Position.
times where they're all sharing that role. They're all
Hmm.
sharing the responsibility of orchestrating, facilitating. And it just comes to a point where it's just a matter of your personal taste in terms of seeing that first
That's,
five
that's,
guys,
the
the
funny
starting
thing is,
lineup.
I think that's when we play our best. When you kind of just don't even know who's going to bring the ball up.
Yeah, and it's inherent that they continue to play this positionless philosophy, in which they kind of do what comes to them naturally and share in that. And I think the first 6 games of the season, even when they lost that one in game 6, I think it was to Orlando, was them taking their respective terms at it, and they were all getting their touches. Now, granted, they were hitting their shots at an amazing clip, and we knew that would be tough to sustain. But just I think the way they were playing and sharing the ball, and clearly that first 6 games they were playing for each other. I don't know what happened or didn't happen to where I don't know if it was shot making, what was going on to where everything kind of stopped clicking and who was supposed to do what. Because I did think that Kemba Walker, being Kemba Walker wasn't probably the best fit for this group of guys, particularly Mitchell Robinson, who would benefit from a pass first type of point guard, or Julius Randle or Obi, who these guys they have great athleticism and can get up the floor. Can you get these guys easy looks or, push the pace a little bit so you can get them some easy oops? So quickly, to me, I didn't think he was ready for that because, running the point guard position in the NBA, you have to be crafty, savvy, to the point where you can look someone off or run a possession where you think that this is going to happen and you can, trick the defense into doing something that catches them off guard. I still believe that he has to learn more, get more reps and be that. But whether or not we needed him to be that at that point, I don't think that it was much needed. I just think that we needed stability, and coach believed that having Burks on the floor was stability. You know,
Fair enough. I would have went with Quickly. That's one of the few times that like I was adamant about uh like why the coach doing this. I
yeah,
didn't even I didn't even like him sitting Kemba completely.
yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought that messed up some things. It made the adjustment for the team. You know what I mean? Like a little harder.
It made the everything, the chemistry was way off from that point. I know Tom has seen some things that we all seen out there. Kemba dying on screens, Kemba being picked on. A lot of things out there that absolutely would drive him crazy. But like you said, to the point where he's out of the rotation completely, I thought destroyed morale because when you have a unhappy energy around you or disgruntled, it starts to fester and it's contagious. And I thought that they, as a team, did a great job of keeping the camaraderie amongst each other around him and supporting and speaking highly of him. And he took it
Mm-hmm.
like a G to a
Yeah,
point that
absolutely.
when he was ready to come back, he did what he did. I felt like he gave us his last big,
Yeah,
shebang before it was all said and done. And
let me
I'm
tell
a,
you though,
mm-hmm,
where he came back and had that beautiful game,
that
and
44 piece.
and we lost. I said, "Yo, this is gonna be bad because he made it so Tibbs has to play him, right? You know what I mean? Like Tibbs can't go back after this. This is what I was
The
saying,
but there was
and
pro.
and we didn't win. Like if it would have been in a win, that could have catapulted the team. You know what I mean? That could have generated some momentum and some camaraderie. Like and it's like, all right, Tibbs, you made a mistake, but here you know what I mean, you rectified it, and now this is why we brought him in. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah,
3 games in a row, all losses, where Kimba was
doing him
cooking, and I was like, yo, if we would have won those, it would have been great. But the fact that we lost him and he played well, so now Tibbs looks bad for sitting him for all that time.
right,
You know what I mean? And, and
right,
and and we don't have the wins. So I was just like, this is gonna snowball into something bad,
and
because if he starts playing bad, you can't sit him no more. He came back and just dropped 44, 30 something. You know what I mean? Like,
kudos to him for doing that because again, I thought that spoke to just Tibbs's personality, just in terms of what we talked about earlier, him being rigid and stubborn, to a degree. But Kemba really took that one on the chin. I wished it panned out. I wished he was able to excel. The storyline was great, but we gotta move. We definitely gotta move forward
yeah,
because putting these 2 point guards, Kemba and DRose, together to make one for a season. I thought about that when they acquired him, and I said that's great. But I said if one of these guys goes down, what do we have? Who are we at that point? And
shout
so
out to,
all. Hmm?
I'm sorry, shout out to Queens for Queens Court and the crossover, which I'm sorry we didn't have a crossover today, but I say that because that's what she said on day one, and me and her was going back and forth.
It looks great on paper, Tone. In reality, we know that their history shows that, and especially how Tom runs these guys, they would not be able to sustain this level of what he's expecting for 82 games. It was not going to happen. So if Deuce McBride was your backup plan, or maybe Alec Burke was the backup plan all along, I don't know. But we can see, they're all different players when they put in roles that aren't natural to them. And I think
Mhm.
that that's where, we kind of been lacking, because all of these guys at times in a row, I hate to see standing in the corner. I hate to see Cam standing in the corner. I hate to see, RJ, when it was early season, standing in the corner. I said, these are guys that need to be, getting touches, moving around, and they're not. Even now, I'm looking at McBride, is kind of standing around. He's off ball. And I said the other day, it's funny to watch a point guard playing off the ball that's been a ball handler, orchestrator his entire life. But, that's the NBA. You get thrust or put in positions where you have to acclimate. And, there's times where I see them, doing great in those roles, ascending. And then there's times where I see they're absolutely sinking and doing horrible. And so, we're not going to, the fans aren't going to spare you, and they're going to rip Tom every chance they get, as if, as if Tom never watched some of these guys, their history. So, whatever they do this offseason, it has to be in the vein of getting a floor general, a leader. It has to, because that's the difference between them, winning and losing every night. You know what I mean? That guy.
I agree. This has been great, man. I'm gonna give you an open invite, man. Anytime I'm live, if you available, you know what I mean. Shoot me a text if you want to jump in the chat. It's been great.
Well, I
Shout
definitely
out to shout out to the chat. As
appreciate
always, Joe
you.
Black is time.
Your
Thank you
Black
for
is
coming
time.
on.
Salute you.
Um,
Salute the chat. What's up?
let them know. You know, if you got any social medias you want to share,
Yeah,
any way to
the
reach out to
social.
you for the business ventures as well.
All right, definitely. If you want to hit me up, business ventures, you can hit me up at Vaughn Allen Official on Instagram. My brand is We Are the Brand. We are the brand. We are the brand. Underscore on Instagram. That's the main attraction, just in terms of what I have going on. With gets all of my love and attention. Yeah,
There you go. Look out. I mean, I don't know how fast we get it done, but we looking to collab on some things as well. So look out for that. If you like what you see, hit that like button, share,
yeah. Hit
subscribe,
that.
do all that good stuff. And I appreciate the chat out there.
Salute all of y'all, Knicks Nation. Let's get it.
Yeah, let's get this win tonight too.
Big facts.
We out.